was me rocking the drums in 2014, just at the onset of the biggest belly flop of my entire life. The story I'm going to share with you today started just before that video was taken at a performance in Miami, Florida. And listen, I'd be lying if I told you that sharing this story is easy for me. It's never really easy to share our darkest moments with the world, especially in a format like this where I know the whole world can see it. And yet, at the same time, I also know that it's only by us sharing our challenges and how we overcome them that we can transform the lives of others and be of some kind of service in this world. And when I think about where I was a few years ago and how much it would have meant for me to find someone else going through what I was going through who was willing to share and offer me some inspiration and even a ray of hope, it makes it a lot easier for me to share this with you today. So what I'm sharing with you is offered humbly, and if it makes a difference in your life somehow, then I'll have done something good for the world, and my painful journey will have served a purpose higher than myself. So back to my belly flop. That belly flop, by the time I hit bottom, left me feeling the way you may possibly be feeling today. I felt stuck, derailed, totally frustrated and confused at how my life had fallen apart just at the time that I was feeling ready to fly. At a time and an age where I had been on top of the world, just completely rocking my life, traveling the world teaching, performing, and inspiring women to live wild and wise, sharing my work, my passions, my play with so much purpose. It seemed at that time that I had infinite possibilities ahead of me. At the time when I was most confident, more than I'd ever been, that I would be doing better than ever, suddenly I found the bottom falling out and my life started spinning completely out of control. And the more I tried to grasp at the familiar ways of saving myself, the more my tool bag failed me. Nothing seemed to be able to save me, and eventually I found myself feeling totally stuck in a world that seemed like a nightmare compared to the world I had once known. I ended up deeply depressed, feeling totally isolated and ashamed of what had happened to me. The stuckness of it was so powerful that when I tried to write or think about what I really wanted, I just drew blanks because I couldn't even see a way out of the black hole that my life had become. So if by now you're resonating with any of this and you're feeling at all hopeless or in despair, I'm here to share with you that you're not alone and there is indeed a light at the end of this tunnel. I found my way out, and you can too. So I want to share my story with you, and also how I had transformed that experience to get my life back on track. My intention today is to hopefully give you some inspiration to not give up on yourself, and to let you know that there is a very duplicatable process that you can learn to get yourself from stuck to unstuck, starting right now. All is not lost. And while I know that when you're in the darkest, deepest moments of despair, it feels that way, trust me when I say there is a way to use what you're going through now as a stepping stone to creating a life that you will not just love, but that will love you back. If I can get out of that dark black hole, then you can too. But at 42 years old, after just relocating my life from Boulder, Colorado to Miami, Florida, things actually started to change. And it was pretty gradual at first. I just remember feeling foggy and a little less sharp mentally. I found myself waking up and drenched in sweat on occasion. And I was having strange reactions to things that normally didn't affect me physically or emotionally. I was used to being really successful and in control of my reality and creating anything I wanted. Just think it and so it is. And so I just tried to power through it and not think about it too much, but the old ways were really failing me. And in the first 6 months that I was in Miami, several things happened to me at the same time that this inner chaos was building. And I went through a series of traumatic events that really rattled my self-esteem and created more of a whirlwind inside to navigate other than the things that were happening on other dimensions. And suddenly I felt like I was in a massive free fall that seemed like it would never end. I didn't really understand what was happening at the time, but it seemed like whatever was happening was really not in my control. My mind and body just weren't functioning the same. And no matter what I tried, nothing seemed to be able to lift the fog. I was getting more depressed and confused by the day. I couldn't even think or process my way out of it. And no matter how much positive thinking, yoga, meditation, and prayer that I practiced, it just felt like even God had abandoned me to fend for myself. And since my work for so many years had been about empowering women and working to help women create amazing opportunities for themselves, I couldn't do it for myself because I felt so completely disempowered. And so as a result, I abandoned my work because I just felt like a fraud. If everything that I knew wasn't working, and how could it be that with all this knowledge, all the training, the self awareness, with everything I knew about consciousness, mindset, visualization, how could it be that I couldn't even get a grasp on what was happening inside of myself? And if I couldn't get myself to feel good, then how the heck was I supposed to help anyone else to be empowered and feel good? How was I supposed to work with anyone when I wasn't really even able to get a grip myself? So I actually started to become concerned enough to seek professional help. And I went to see therapists and healers and doctors. And all of them assured me that there was nothing wrong with me. There was nothing showing up by my blood work that indicated any problems with my physical health. My hormone levels were totally normal. So it left me thinking, it just must all be in my head, which of course made me feel even more ashamed, scared, and confused. And all of this ended up amounting to me spending a lot of money with the move, setting up a new home, doctor's bills, and just not feeling well enough to even function or work some days. There just wasn't enough money coming in, so it all ended up pushing my finances to the breaking point. And to make a long story short, I eventually found myself stuck in a job I hated, feeling like a total loser, completely out of touch with myself, in a relationship that was emotionally abusive, and with a self-esteem that had bottomed out, had gone underground. And there were days during that time when even answering the phone to talk to a friend was an experience of disappointment because I just didn't seem to have anything to contribute to anyone. I felt so depressed, so miserable, so empty that I became ashamed of myself and I just wanted to hide from the world. And in fact, that's what I started to do. That shame and hiding led to deeper depression, anxieties and fears, and more isolation followed until I found myself completely sure that there was no way out of the mess that had become my life. That was over 3 years ago. My life now is a completely different story. I've recreated myself and found that this challenging time was actually the greatest gift that God could have given me. This is me now. My days are completely my own to create however I want. I feel totally free and unstuck. I have a comfortable passive income that's growing on autopilot in a small company that helps local business owners to increase their profits up to 60% in the first year. I'm traveling the world again, loving the life I live. I have ample time to enjoy my friends, my family. I have healthy relationships that are drama-free. And life is again a playground of possibilities. I'm publishing my 3rd book, and I'm sharing my life and stories again to inspire other women to live wild and wise. But what was it that happened to me? And how did I dig myself out of that downward spiral and turn my life around? Listen, if you're in this place, I know that what you really want to know is how I did that. And I know that when I was in that place, I would have given just about anything to find someone who could actually relate to me. I called everyone I was close to, all my friends, and they all just said, "Oh, you'll be fine tomorrow. Take it easy, girl." But every day I was deeper and deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. And the day I started to figure it all out, I found myself baffled and in a state of despair, but also somewhat relieved. I woke up from another horrible night of sleepless tossing and turning. My mind was screaming all kinds of insanity at me, and I just wanted to find a long, dark cave to crawl into and never have to emerge from again. I looked down and I saw my hair on the floor. I ran my hand through my head, and more hair came out in my hand. I brushed my hair, and it just seemed to be falling out everywhere. When I took a shower, I noticed there was hair in the drain more than ever before. Something in me just started to click, and I began to wonder if maybe, in fact, the doctors were completely wrong and something was, in fact, going on with me, something beyond my control that was more than just in my head. I started to think about it all, put it all together: skin conditions, sleepless nights, sweaty nights, hair falling out, depression, mind and moods out of control, mental fog, lack of drive, lack of desire to do much of anything, total emotional breakdowns for no reason whatsoever. And I started to do some research. And as I read up on my symptoms, it hit me like a ton of bricks that what I was experiencing were menopause symptoms to the utmost degree. And so when soon after that, a few days later, the hot flashes started, suddenly it all made perfect sense. At 41 years old, I was in full-blown and highly symptomatic menopause, and nothing that the doctor told me contrary to that mattered anymore. It was time for me to take things into my own hands and find my way through this, because clearly the doctors had missed every symptom I had had for the last 6 months. I'd had my hormones checked, and the doctors assured me they were normal, that I was way too young for menopause. They were attributing the night sweats to anxiety and put me on antidepressant medications, which made me worse. I lasted less than a month on them. They destroyed my digestion so badly I couldn't eat anything without severe pain. What I knew of menopause at that time mostly was just hot flashes and weight gain. Most of my life, I'd had very few PMS symptoms. So few, in fact, that I actually used to think women used it as an excuse for living full lives. I was so active and so in charge, I just never really let that stuff slow me down. But here I was, face to face with the dark side of hormonal shifts at the young age of 41. And the more research I did, the more I realized that what I was going through had a huge, if not complete, basis in hormonal shifts that were happening. I learned that these hormonal changes can impact you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and create huge upheavals in your life, even in the way that you think about your life, far beyond what the common talk about hot flashes and weight gain can be. Some women experience feelings of mental imbalances, brain fog, deep depression, and extreme in cases, sometimes feelings and symptoms of psychosis, and even suicidal thoughts. In addition, it can change the whole way that you work in the world. What matters to you, your values, your priority, your belief systems will be challenged during this time. So knowledge being power, I started to use what I had learned to work for me. I consulted a few natural healer specialists that I knew for dietary shifts, and over time I got the physical symptoms completely under control through a combination of diet and lifestyle changes. The mental and emotional impacts for me were actually the more challenging ones, and they were the ones that took me a lot longer to get through. My mindset, by the time I figured it all out, was a train wreck of confusion, disempowerment, and frustration, not to mention shame. By the time I figured it all out, I was flat broke, living in a tiny efficiency that was so small I could pretty much fry my eggs from my toilet. I was deep in an unhealthy relationship because I felt so abandoned by everyone else. He was the one and only person who stuck with me through these challenges and helped me financially to stay afloat. I was so miserable. I couldn't even imagine wanting anyone to be around me. And so even though I was in a relationship that wasn't so good for me and with me, I stayed because I was so afraid that I wouldn't survive financially without some kind of support. And there really wasn't anyone else showing up. I called everyone close to me, and no one seemed to realize how bad things had really gotten. I think really no one could even imagine that I could actually be where I was. You know, when people know you in a certain way as powerful and strong and empowered, and then you hit that other side, it's almost like people don't really recognize that you need help and support in those times. So after reaching out a few times to people I knew and not being taken seriously, I just realized that I was on my own with this and I had to find my way through it. And luckily, I knew what to do. I just didn't feel like I had the power to do it. But I committed to doing what I knew to do anyway and just taking it one day at a time. And so I embarked on step one, and I surrendered. I made a conscious choice to allow myself the space and time to move through this without panic. I stopped fighting with the reality of what was happening, and I just let it be. I accepted that for now, this was my life, and there was no need to do anything else but accept it for today. And in that acceptance, I was able to find more enjoyment, a little bit of freedom, and a lot more ability to handle the days as they came, although it was still a roller coaster for quite some time after that. I knew that there was some reason other than myself that this was all happening, and I decided to commit to diving for the pearls of it so that one day maybe I would be able to help someone else go through it. And I just allowed the natural process to unfold. And I made a plan. I sat down and I wrote it all out. I gave myself a timeline, and I committed to allowing myself 1 year to work this job that I hated, to make as much money as I possibly could, to start to dig myself out of the hole and get some money back in the bank. I knew that once that came, the rest would come organically, and I could continue to plan each step of the way. But trust me when I say there were many, many days when I felt like I would never enjoy my life again. The only sanity I could cling to was my plan. I would give it my all for 1 year, and if at the end of that year I still hated the job, I would put my plan B into motion to be able to leave. And plan B was a side business, something I could use as a building block and create passive income during the year to at least have working in the background if I needed it. And just making this plan gave me a ray of hope, even if at that time I didn't necessarily know how it was all going to go. But to make a long story short, a year later, I left my job, started the deeper work of healing myself mentally and emotionally from the damaging impacts. Within 3 months of leaving my job, I had completely replaced my income with the side business by working at part-time from home, and so I had a cushion, which enabled me to start disconnecting from the abusive relationship and creating new boundaries, stronger boundaries around what I would tolerate. And actually, this transformed the relationship considerably and shifted the dynamics to a point where it actually started to become more workable and a more enjoyable experience. We gained a lot of respect for each other, and we really learned a lot together. Within 6 months of leaving my job, I was starting to feel like myself again. Spontaneous moments of joy, lightheartedness were returning, and I could actually see that my future was going to be much better than the past 3 years had been. And since I now had some passive income, some stability, I was freed up, and I knew that I would never return to a job I hated again. I started to travel again and write again. I spent a month in Cuba, one of my favorite places in the world, and my passions for dancing and community arts returned. I went 3 more times to Cuba that year and continued following my plan and process, rewriting and redefining my life to new standards every single day. And since then, it's been a gradual and steady, consistent climb to where I am now. I've mastered new parts of myself, learned new skills, and also relied heavily on skills I developed before my breakdown happened. You see, a few years before this, in 2012, I believe it was, I created a program. It was called Dream It, Live It, How to Create a Masterpiece Life One Dream at a Time. It's a process that I discovered within myself that I'd been using intuitively any time I had a breakdown or I got stuck. And when I look at this last breakdown, this biggest one of my life, and how I got myself unstuck and back on track through menopause and severe depression, I can see that I used the same process once again. But this time, through it, I've activated a whole new level of mastery. And so I share all of this with you to hopefully let you know that you're never alone out there, and more importantly, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a process to transforming your world from stuck to unstuck, and it can be broken down into 6 really simple steps. And if you follow these steps in the right order, you too can take your life from where you are now to wherever you want to be in a year or maybe less. It all starts the moment you say yes to activating your own inner mastery in the game of life. It doesn't mean life is just always perfect once you embark on this journey, but what it does mean is that you never again have to be the victim of your circumstances. There are specific steps and a proven system that can empower you every day to create a life that truly works for you, a lifestyle that's uniquely your own, and a way of being in the world that inspires you by being aligned with your passions, cultivating your purpose, and allowing infinite possibilities to always be in your scope. So I hope that you will join me on this journey of living wild and wise and come with me to activate your mastery.